In criminal law, the burden of proof is a fundamental principle that determines which party is responsible for proving the elements of the case. It establishes the standard of which evidence is evaluated to ensure justice is served. In criminal cases, the burden of proof lies in the prosecution, which must demonstrate that defendants' guilt are beyond a reasonable doubt. These high standards reflects the gravity of the criminal charges and the potential consequences for accused. Understanding the burdens of proof is essential for the comprehending how legal decisions are made and how justice is administered in criminal justice system.
So for the standards of proof, the first point will be preponderance of the evidence. Most civil lawsuits require plaintiff to demonstrate to the judge or jury that the defendant is more than 50% responsible for their suffering and losses. Plaintiff will often sue defendants to recover financial compensation for damages such as medical bills, lost wages, or property damage. So the second point will be the clear and convincing. Beyond financial compensation, a plaintiff may sue for something intangible. Clear and convincing evidence requires a higher standard of evidence than the preponderance of the evidence standard and may be used in claims of job discrimination. So the third point will be beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt establish that no other reasonable explanation exists other than the evidence presented to the court. Commonly used in criminal prosecutions such as murder trials, this is the highest legal standard of proof.
Prosecution in criminal cases. General rule. The prosecution holds the legal burden of proof throughout the trial to establish the facts in issues. The accused has evidential burden to undermine the prosecution's case either through cross-examination or by presenting their own evidence and witnesses. Circumstantial evidences. The nature. The judicial evidence is either direct or circumstantial. Direct evidence is attested directly by witnesses, things, or documents. Circumstantial evidences involve relevant facts from which the existence or non-existence of facts in issue may be inferred. Standard of proof. The prosecution must meet the same standard of proof when relying on circumstantial evidence as they do with the direct evidence. Cases like Chan Chuang Kong against public prosecutor and Karam Singh against public prosecutor highlight the distinction between direct and circumstantial evidence. Prima facie refers to the stage of the trial where it is determined whether the defense should be called as per section 173-Roman 3 of the Criminal Procedure Code. Pre-Ho Tua Tau debates in the 1930s focus on the interpretation of the previous section 173F. In Man bin Abbas against public prosecutor, the issue was the magistrate's acquittal of an accused who remained silent after being called for defense. Ho Tua Tau test. Prior in 1981, a prima facie case was associated with being proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Ho Tua Tau against public prosecutor introduced a different approach for establishing a prima facie case. Post Ho Tua Tau against public prosecutor was endorsed by several cases, but Munusami against public prosecutor differentiated between prima facie and beyond a reasonable doubt. Justice Muhammad Azmi argued there was no difference between pre-Ho Tua Tau and Ho Tua Tau cases. The 1997 amendments. The Criminal Procedure Code was amended to define prima facie as interpreted in Public Prosecutor against Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim by Justice Augustine Paul. A prima facie case means a case which, if unrebutted, would warrant a conviction, a definition anchored in the pre-1997 Section 173F.
In a criminal case, the burden of proof encompasses several key aspects. First, prosecution's responsibility. The prosecution must present sufficient evidence to prove the accused's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. This involves presenting credible witnesses, physical evidence, and other forms of proof that establish each element of the crime. Second, standard of proof. The beyond a reasonable doubt. standard is the highest in the legal system. It requires the prosecution to convince the jury or judge to a very high level of certainty that the accused is guilty. This is to prevent wrongful convictions, reflecting the principle that it's better for a guilty person to go free than for an innocent person to be wrongfully convicted. Third, presumption of innocence. The accused is presumed innocent until proven guilty. This means they do not have to present any evidence or prove their innocence. The defense can focus on highlighting weaknesses in the prosecution's case, introducing doubt, and providing alternative explanations. For jury instructions, in jury trials, the judge will instruct the jury on the burden of proof, emphasizing that if there is any reasonable doubt about the accused's guilt, they must acquit. Fifth, impact on verdict. If the prosecution fails to meet the burden of proof, the accused must be acquitted. Even if the jury or judge believes the accused is probably guilty, they must acquit if there is reasonable doubt.
Civil cases. The first one is general rule. In civil cases, the plaintiff must prove their case on a balance of probabilities. The defendant needs to provide sufficient evidence to challenge the plaintiff's claim. The burden of proof lies with the person who would lose if no evidence were presented. Then the next one is proving particular facts. While the plaintiff carries the legal burden to prove their case, Section 103 of the Evidence Act states that the burden of proof for any specific fact rests on the person who wants the court to believe in that fact, unless a law specifies otherwise. In Eastern Enterprises v. Ong Chu Kim, the defendant was accused of using premises for illegal or immoral purpose. And the last one, the third one, is proving facts, especially within knowledge. When a fact is especially within a person's knowledge, they must prove it. In Sundram v. Arjunan, the plaintiff sued the defendants for injuries from a collision. So I think that's all from me.
In summary, the burden of proof in criminal law is a crucial mechanism that safeguards the rights of the accused while ensuring the justice pursued with rigor and fairness. By requiring the prosecution to prove the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, the legal system upholds a high standard of proof that serves to protect individuals from wrongful convictions. This principle underscores the importance of the rigorous evidence evaluation and reinforcements the notion that it's better for a guilty person to go free than for an innocent person to wrongly punished.